Let's see. That should turn red in a second. If it hasn't turned red already. Y'all let me know if y'all see something that said, there we go. Now it's live. All right, now I'm going to the intro.
What is a critical conversation? A critical conversation is a conversation that reveals important context, not only about ourselves, but about other people. Critical conversations edify, heal, and provide substance. Join Latanya Harris Gooden as she introduces us to critical conversations right here on Trailblazers Radio.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends, countrymen, and Romans and stuff like that? Welcome to Trailblazers Radio, man. Thank you guys for tuning in to us. You guys could have been anywhere else, but you guys are right here with us, rocking out with us, and we most definitely appreciate you for that. Tonight is a very special night and a very special episode. And I can't be prouder of my sister here, man. And what I'm gonna do right now, I'm gonna get out the way and let her do her thing. But before I get out of the way and let her do her thing, I want to introduce y'all to my sister, Latanya Harris Gooden, also known as LHG. And I also want to introduce you guys to a show that's going to be here exclusively on Trailblazers Radio. So, ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, I'm going to introduce to you guys LHG and Critical Conversations.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Can y'all hear me okay? I'm so new to this. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
We good?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Good evening, everybody out there. Oh, my goodness. I am so excited. Thank you to my radio boss. Thank you, Fred, for the introduction. Thank you, Fred, for the ID. I give God the glory, the honor, the praise, just for being able to be before you tonight with these incredible women of God who I love dearly. This is the Critical Conference with LHG, and I am your truly Latanya Harris Gooden. Oh my goodness. So let's get into a little bit of prayer before I get started. Just to ask God to manifest himself tonight. Father God, I just thank and praise you for an opportunity to come together with these sisters and with all the viewers and listeners to honor you as we explore a topic that is near and dear to my heart. It's very sensitive, but God, I ask that you give me the strength and give us the strength to talk about the trauma. But God, let us not pitch our tent in the trauma. Let us journey and move forward to victory and triumph, knowing that there is a purpose even in the pain, even in the process. And we have to trust you because you're in this process. So God, tonight, let somebody be set free, delivered, and let them know that whatever it is that they face, they don't alone. I give you honor for what you're going to do, you're doing on this broadcast. Jesus. Amen. Amen. I'm going to give you one with me and why I chose to call this Critical Conversations. You will learn a little bit about the broadcast because that and me to get to what I am, why I respond to how I have to go back to the good. Just kind of talk about and deal with some things that I saw or didn't would have wanted to see. And let me just be very, very this time. This is not a shame game. It's literally acknowledging what is, accepting what is, and learning how to process through what needs to be done to become better. Because I'm a myself. So I'm going to attack this conversation from one point. from my daughter's childhood. I'm kind of getting what she needed because of what I've been. And the good thing about how y'all learn, I'm hood, I'm spiritual, I'm a little ratchet. So yeah, we're gonna be churchy, but I'm really down to earth when it comes to the human experience. So bear with me. I may jump around a little bit, but I asked the Lord when I wanted to do this to show me how to get people to open up and have those discussions that people said you should never have. And let's just be real. I can speak from my nation. We didn't talk about trauma at all. And if there was something going on in that stayed in the house, what went on in the house had to stay in the house. So we had a masquerade party, if you will, go to church smiling, get all dressed up, and act as nothing was wrong. And unfortunately, we were living a lie. And again, I'm blaming nobody. It is what it is. It was what it was. But here, almost 47, making a conscious decision that it has to change. And it has to change now because people are dying. People are feeling lost and confused, and they don't know why. And we're so super spiritual as if we didn't land on heaven's patio, and we're not dealing with real life experience. So I also want to scratchy this, and y'all excuse me. I have my fan open and on and my window open every night, so y'all excuse me. I wanted to have my smooth radio voice, but I got my BIG with a little bit of JJ Evans voice on, so y'all bear with me. So it's called critical conversations because it is something that needs to happen. Think hospital and you're over the intercom, cold blue. That kind of means that somebody is in distress and we need all hands on deck. And that is why I call this critical conversations, because if we do not have them, we may not make it. Our minds are full of turmoil because we haven't had the real honest conversations. That's why I call it that. And tonight's topic is childhood trauma. But over the next few weeks, I'm going to be dealing with dimensions of wellness. I won't deep into them now, but one of them is emotional wellness. So I want to introduce my guest. I'm going to start with girl Kia. Yes, she's a grown lady, but I call her my girl because it was my training at our job years ago. And you never know when the Lord allows your path to cross with someone you know in what capacity you end up working with them. He can use a job to get you to cross paths, but you never know how later on in life you may, work alongside them and do different things. So we have been knowing each other. Ooh, Kia, I want to say, is it 8 years? Something like that? Between 8 and 10 years?
Had to be. Yep. Because I think
something
it was
like
12,
that.
13.
And I remember, I remember when a few babies were born. Is there a 5 amazing children? Is a many things in her that should have taken her out, but with her tenacious spirit, her fight and ambition, it just didn't happen. And life's obstacles, love how she does this, life's obstacles groomed her for who she is today. And that means what she's dealt with is purposeful. She owns Von Shea Bar and Days in Dolby and East Point, Lachey Emporium LLC, and A Better Life Incorporated. And she's got a major opportunity coming in 2023. And she says that God is the foundation for all things, and her children are her why. Please welcome Wilson to the show. Hi, Kia.
Hi.
And her daughter, Bria. Is that you over there, girl? Hi, Bria. Thank you for this way. Well, my next guest, oh my goodness, Evangelist Alma Hayes Farrell. She is a widow, mother of 3 adult children, 15 grandchildren, founder of Owning Your Own Destiny LLC. She has a master's degree in community counseling from Oakland University, LLPC with State of Michigan, certified advanced alcohol and drug counselor, certified clinical supervisor in Michigan, trauma and loss specialist, BA in developmental psychology from UAD. That's my school. AA applied child care in County Community College. She worked for 20 years in the community health as a substance use specialist, assertive community treatment and home-based supervisor and intake specialist. She's been a Head Start teacher in disability education and mental health, and then a missionary for over 25 years in the Church of God in Christ. Please welcome, I call her Miss Alma, Evangelist Alma, Dr. Alma. She's all of that. Please welcome her to the show as well. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. I'm just Alma.
That's Alma. I don't know if I can do that, Miss Alma. That don't sound right to me.
Well, Miss Alma will be all right.
I can't promise you.
Miss Alma.
Thank you, Miss
all
Alma.
right.
So, okay, yes, ma'am. One of the things that I want to in on in doing this show and subsequent shows is wellness. And I know we probably have different definitions of what wellness is. I want to go to Kia first. Kia, what would you say? What feel like to you?
Okay, I want to make sure I heard the question correctly. What is wellness to me?
Yes.
Okay. Wellness to me is a spiritual, mental, and physical balance in life. It is not a gray area. It's not a high. It's not a low, but it is a median. It's like I said, a balanced scale, something that brings along the good and the bad, but combined makes you well. Wellness is being stable, being healthy in all those aspects of your life. And wellness is setting boundaries. Wellness is setting realistic expectations and not beating yourself up when you don't meet them. That's what wellness is to me.
That's good, Kia. That's good. I like the fact that you put a few different components in there. And from what I took from your definition, it's like when everything is aligned and balanced, because thing is going, awry and something else is not, you're out of balance, you're out of whack. So I like how you put that. It's conglomerate of different things.
I am not hearing you. I'm not hearing you, LaTanya.
Yeah, we lost your sound somewhere.
Are you using headphones? Because if you're using headphones, oftentimes it kind of interferes with the sound. I know it happens on Zoom when people are using headphones. Still not hearing you. Okay, you're back. You were back. You're back. Whatever you're doing.
Can y'all hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Can y'all hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know what happened. I apologize. I don't know what happened. Sorry, everybody. I hope this works out and it doesn't go out again. Miss Alma, I want to pose the same question to you. And seeing that you have such a background in mental health and health, can you give me what your definition of wellness is as well?
Wellness, my definition of wellness would be the total health of a person. The physical health, the mental health, spiritual, emotional, cognitive, all of those different things compose of the mental health. And it has to be in a balance. It has to be a balance. Many times there is no balance there. Sometimes when we talk about spiritual, when we talk about things spiritually, sometimes we're so so heavily bound, we're no earthly good, because we don't accept that mental part with it. And at the same time, the state have not allowed us to add the mental piece there. They're doing a little bit now with it because they're allowing the clients to really set their goals and allow them to put just a little bit of that spiritual aspect in it. But there was no balance. There have to be a balance when it comes to that.
I want to go to the definition according to the National Institute of Wellness, and it says wellness is an active process through which people become aware of and make choices towards a more successful existence. And it also says it's a conscious, self-guided, evolving process of potential. Guys, no one can really spearhead your wellness process or journey except for you. No one can walk that out for you. Also says, I love it's multi-dimensional and holistic. Now, I'm telling you, some of these spiritual people are going to say, holistic, that's witchcraft. What does that mean? Don't do that. It just means y'all spooky on me. Don't do that. It is in style of spiritual well-being and the environment. It's positive and it's affirmed. Now, the Simon Fraser University says wellness is a lifelong process of becoming aware of your own choices, making your own decisions that will help you live a balanced and fulfilling life. And one of the reasons why I chose to focus on the emotional wellness is, to me, this is my opinion, when your emotional well-being is questionable and uncertain, it can derail every other area of your life. You can be good at your job. You can be married with children. You can have so many other great things going for you. In ministry, you could be in all these places. But if you're operating in emotional unrest, you're not well, and you could be imposing your not so wellness on other people. So I feel we owe it to ourselves to take the time to talk about and discuss and look at what emotional wellness looks like. And for me, I had to go back to childhood because I never had an opportunity or a forum to discuss what I was feeling as a kid. They said kids should be and not heard. And when you had to speak up and say something, the consensus was you're talking back. You are being disrespectful. So therefore, when you try to say, I'm going through something, you can't. And then that turns into bad behavior. And then the first thing is, I'm not saying that that's right or wrong, but we don't take the time to understand that a child does not look and say, get therapy. They're sponges. They're taking in everything that you're doing as a parent or what you're not doing as a parent, and they know how to process that. Okay, I'm being told that my sound is, am I coming across low, y'all?
You're breaking.
I'm trying to, okay.
Yeah, your
Is
words,
that a
you're
little bit
breaking with your
better?
words. Yes.
Now, I don't know if it's here or what. I am so sorry for the technical
I don't know if
issues,
you could.
y'all.
I don't know
Bear
if you could
with
hear me, but are you using headphones?
No, I don't have headphones.
Okay, because sometimes that can be a problem.
Nope, I sure don't. I sure don't. Is it breaking up really bad now?
We can hear you
A
better
little
now.
bit better?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I tried on the highest level of volume, so I'm hoping that helps. That helps. Okay, so now I want to talk about wholeness, and then we're going to segue into childhood trauma. So according to what wholeness is, I just looked it up. I just went on the computer and found what it says wholeness is. Wholeness is the quality of being complete or a single unit and not broken or divided into parts. The need for wholeness and harmony in your mind, your body, and your spirit. And when I hear the word harmony, I think of music. I think of how we have soprano and alto and tenor, and how all those parts together on the right key form a harmonious melody. And is that not what we want in our everyday lives as well? The World Health Organization, I'm on something today, y'all, defines wholeness as the state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of infirmity. I found that very interesting because in wholeness, I would think that means you don't have infirmity, and you can still be whole, but have an infirmity as well. So I want to start going to the childhood trauma subject, and I am going to just find what it is. I found an article at Children's Hospital, and I want to define childhood trauma. All right. It says the experience of an event by a child that is emotionally painful, distressful, which often results in lasting mental and physical effects. Some of the ways children are traumatized are accidents, bullying, chaos or dysfunction in the home, domestic violence, incarceration, death of one, emotional abuse, physical abuse or neglect, separation from a parent or caregiver, sexual abuse, stress caused by poverty, illness, violence at home or school, in the community, and war or terrorism. I'm going to start with Kia. We hear that list of ways that children are traumatized. Does any of that speak to you? And what is your story in terms of childhood trauma? I'll go to you first and then Bria if she feels comfortable.
Okay. So most of that speaks to me. I grew up in a pretty overall well-rounded home. My mom worked very hard. My dad was a worker. Well, my stepfather, as you know, very hard worker. In my early years coming up, for maybe the first 7 or 8 years of my life, I was raised by my sister's father, who was Caucasian. And in the beginning of my life, I was raised to believe that was my father, because he was there from the age of 2 until about 8 or 9. And he was great, to me. Never treated me any different. My sister looks identical to him. I look identical to my mom. So there was never a difference set between us or anything. But I always felt in my head, this ain't right. So there's a underlying secret somewhere in here. And I guess that was my early discernment. I kind of got that gifting very early on. Um, and then with the accident, um, at 2 years old, I was in a really bad accident with my mom and sister. My sister was injured pretty bad, actually. She could have lost her life, and we're 2 years apart. So if I was two, my sister was still in a baby carrier. Um, my mom was injured pretty badly in that accident. The car was totaled. We were in a what looked like a piece of aluminum foil, um, and that accident caused me to have not necessarily claustrophobia or anything like that, but it most certainly caused me to have some type of feeling where I don't like things or people very close to me. And I don't like confinement at all. It doesn't matter if I'm in my house too long. I feel like I got to get out of here. If I'm in my car too long, I feel like I got to get out of here. And so those things that are traumatic can carry over into your adult life, unfortunately, and be a problem if not dealt with. Um, and then on the mental side, I come from a family who has some mental illness. And for people who believe in generational cycles, I don't believe in generational curses because curses are things that are put on you, in my opinion, but cycles are something that are continued behaviors throughout generations or whatever. So I consider them generational cycles that we had in our family, with mental illness, with suicide attempts, and with um, very, very deep, dark depressions, even had having to be institutionalized at times, different people in the family. So um, for me, those childhood traumas, to see them before me in the generations before, in my adult years, even though I suffered with depression and things like that, there were certain things that I just put a stamp on and said, absolutely not. I will not allow that to carry on in my life or in my children's lives. Um, and so, even though I thought that I was causing myself to be strong from childhood in those ways, I actually was not as strong as I thought I was. I was really setting a lot of bricks up that I considered my strengths. And they caused blockages. And now I have these little people. I have 5 kids, and they all have blockages too. And they were born with these blockages. And so it is very, very real. For me, growing up, I was taught from different things. Just like Tanya said, you are a sponge when you're a kid. Um, so you absorb all aspects of what's coming at you. For me, when it came to coping with things, like now as an adult, people say, "Oh, God, Kiera, you're so calm. You can handle things. You handle pressure very well. You react exactly how you need to." Yeah, that sounds real good. But on the inside, I am a screaming, raging individual. And I do not have that lady under control. And she's still that child Kia, and a lot of times I have to say, be quiet in there, and calm down in there, because she's my rage and she's my fear and she's my um, anxiety. That person is still the kid me that I have not dealt with as of yet. But on the outside, I am strength and I am courage and I am confident, but I am still so much in that past of those traumas of my past. Um, and so when I have to deal with certain things emotionally, um, I go back into a space of, well, what did I see when I grew up? What did I absorb when I grew up? I was taught, if you are angry, you beat people up. You react exactly how you feel. If you are in your car, you want to run them over, do that. That was how that was what I seen. That was what I was taught. You know, hurt people. And um, when you get very depressed and you get overwhelmed, go in your room, shut the door, cut off the light, put on whatever your music of choice is, and don't come out. Those kids out there, they can deal with themselves. That was what I seen. And that's not a slight to anyone that I seen that from, but it was something that I absorbed, you know, and I didn't necessarily see individuals deal with mental illness because my parents were pastors. And back then, in Baptist churches in particular, mental illness did not exist. That was a sweep under the rug. You could not deal with that. Um, and all they taught was fire and brimstone. It wasn't
Wow.
a matter of teaching mental.
Mhm.
It wasn't a matter of teaching real life stuff. If you were going through molestation, if you were going through just the feelings that an individual has once they cross over into like 11 or 12 years old, the changes a female goes through in her body
Yeah.
and how that affects you mentally, you know, those things we couldn't deal with in church. So, and we were always told to shut up. And
Mhm.
it's funny because just a few days ago, Kim and I were talking about it because I was locked up at the age of 13 for 3 years. And I'm grateful to my mother for making a hard decision to say, you know what, I put her through the mental health facility, I put her through counseling, um, and it just wasn't working. She's still enraged, she's still acting out. What is up with this kid? I ended up going to a maximum security um, juvenile facility. And I stayed for 3 years for something that most kids at the age of 13 would have only gone and stayed in a low security place for maybe 30 days. But when I went into court, I was so nonchalant. And I told that judge, I don't care what y'all do to me. I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And when I get out of wherever you sending me to, I'm going to still do what I want to do. And that was my attitude. And, you know, Kim was saying the other day, she said, kid, nobody would be that stupid to say that. I said, but you know what? It was real. It was
Right.
my authentic feelings. And I'm glad that I've always carried the authenticity
Mm-hmm.
because had I not, I would not have gotten the actual help that I needed at that time. Whereas my siblings did not get as much help as I did. And when I got home, I had so many more resources available to me because I experienced that stuff. And it also taught me, okay, now I have to set boundaries because I can't get away with the things that I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I got off into a lot of other things, um, with dealing with drug dealers and everything else in my life, I always set a boundary where I was like, okay, I can't do that because I might go back here. And to experience those things at such a young age, I mean, I was locked up with murderers and a young lady that was literally accountable,
Wow.
sex offenders. I was a kid and I did not come from a place where I lived in the hood
Mm-hmm.
and that was just my environment. That was not my life. So when I was around those people, I was like, these are not my kind of people. Why am I even here? You know, and um, to look back on those things now,
Mm-hmm.
it really developed me to where I am right now. And now there's a young lady that's been placed in my life that is going through some of the same things. And my encouragement to her parents are make the hard decisions because if it was my kid, I would, as much as it would hurt me to do it, I would make the hard decision because going off to Adrian at 13 saved my life.
Wow.
And so, where my mom may have her regrets and she feels bad for those decisions, I am forever grateful because it saved my life. You know, I got the therapy that I needed, I got the counseling that I needed, I got to be held accountable for my actions early on.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I make sure that in my adult life, um, I'm the same way with my kids,
Mm-hmm.
and I make sure that those patterns don't trail down to them. And there have been some mistakes that I made even with them. I have not been a perfect mother. I've made very poor decisions, but I don't regret not one decision that I've made because they have sharpened me to where I am now. And my daughter's here, you know, with me now. You know, she goes through her things, But one thing that me and her in particular make sure that we fight is those generational cycles. We refuse. It stops here. I will not go to my grave
Yes.
and let this go beyond me.
My
It
God.
stops here. We will deal with whatever the depression is and whatever that takes. We will face it head on. My children have voices, and sometimes people tell me, "Yo, kids, you let them talk a little bit too much." No, I don't let them talk too much because I need to see their authentic hearts. I need to know what they really feel underneath the surface so that we can deal with the root, pluck it, and be done with it. Because I don't want my grandchildren or my great grandchildren to go through any of these things either. And so, those are the things that kind of got me where I am now. And that's just a surface part of my story. But those are some of the major pieces, and I commend my mom for being who she is, who she was, because she wasn't necessarily the most fair plate either. And through it all, she did a phenomenal job with us, even suffering some of those same generational cycles.
Wow.
And so, even though we still have to go through our counseling and therapy for it, still getting through things because my great grandmother passed before she could deal with it. My
Wow.
grandmother passed before she could deal with it. I tell my mother all the time, I'm not just fighting for me, but
Yeah.
we going back up the bloodline, and I'm gonna make sure that you
Come
are
on.
delivered too.
Yeah.
And
Come on.
it stops here.
Yes.
There's no more trauma.
Yeah.
And I tell my kids I made mistakes. I have 5 children by 5 different men. I do not regret that.
Right.
Because what I always tell people is this: some people have 5 kids by the same no good man. I wasn't willing to do that.
Well,
So maybe it just took me to make 5 different mistakes.
all right. Hey.
But I own it.
Real talk, right?
I like that.
And I have 2 of those fathers are deceased, and that's something I have to deal with even now because I have a daughter who's very hurt because her father is deceased. I have a son who is very guarded and shut down, more so like I used to be, who just found out his dad died this year.
Wow.
And he has not even dealt with the emotions of it. So, those are decisions that I made because of those men that I chose and their lifestyles. Now I have to deal with the children and their hurts.
Yes.
And now here's a new trauma.
Yeah.
So that's my short story, I guess.
Well, let me just say this. First of all, you never know what a person has gone through by looking at them. People say, well, I don't look like what I've been through. And
Yep.
just knowing you for as long as I have known you, Kia, I didn't even know half of that. And it just comes to show that we carry so much unbeknownst to other people.
Yep.
And it starts to make sense why you're so resilient. I want to applaud you for, first of all, for sharing what you shared, for being honest, transparent about everything that you said in the presence of your child.
Yeah.
And I want to get Miss Alma in on this, and I'm going to come back to Bria. Don't go far, Bria. Miss Alma, I want to know from your perspective and your experience, is this common? Have you heard this before? And what advice from a clinical perspective would you give to a mom like Kia that has suffered this way?
Wow, wish I could have met Kia years ago. Just let me tell you a little bit about me. I worked for Head Start for more than 20 years and with children and families. And I came to the conclusion that in working with the children, you couldn't really do a lot because, the parents had so much going on with them until what could you do, with the children unless you were able to reach the parents. And at that place, there you couldn't do that. You couldn't get involved in that way with children and parents. So after I completed my degree in developmental psychology, I waited a while, and it just seemed like I wasn't doing enough to reach the parents. I worked with the parents more closely as an administrator with education, and they slid and the disabilities, but mental health didn't come in until toward the end of my journey. But I wanted to go back to school because I've always been interested in helping people. Let me go back a little bit further. I am number 9 of 14 children. I was born in the South, and my parents were sharecroppers. So I'm a little bit older than you all are. But that's what we did. A lot of times we didn't have the food and clothing and things that we need. And it takes me back to the thing of adverse childhood trauma experiences. And it's really experiences of trauma, the different things that they've heard. I was talking to a group of women a couple of weeks ago, and I was saying that many of you've never lived in a neighborhood where uh, you heard gunshots all through the night, or somebody was creeping in your house in the middle of the night, and all those different things that affect children as they're growing up. But I decided that I wanted to go into social work, thinking that I would help people better. And actually, it was my advisor at UOD who said to me, she said, Elma, I've watched you throughout your time when you've been here. And she said, I think you would do really well in counseling. And I never thought anything about that, but I can remember my friends as we were growing up, not just the friends, but as in adulthood, we all had children. And we would go out sometimes, the ladies and I, and they would always say to me, Elma, we're all the same age, and we're sisters, but you're more like our mother, because I was always trying to do the right thing and encourage them to do the right thing. But when I went into counseling, I thought about it and I went through the counseling program. And the very first class that I took, it was a requirement for the program. It was that we had to do 8 weeks of counseling. And I said to myself, because I didn't have any experiences that I thought anything about. I grew up in that house where they said children are seen and not heard. And I learned to keep my mouth shut because I can count on probably 2 fingers the whoopings that I got for my mouth because I wasn't going to do it. I was obedient. But I had a sister that was a year older than I was, and I was always saying, Mama gonna kill us both, because she's always doing something that she didn't have any business doing. But when I went to that first counseling class, the young man, because it didn't matter to me if it was a male or female therapist, and the young man said to me, he said, what brings you to counseling? And I said, well, it's a requirement, right? And but yeah, what brings you here? I said, well, for the grade. I have to do this. And I was being perfectly true and honest. And I thought about it and I said, now I got to give him something. I said, because I'm going to be sitting in that seat one day, because these were students who were doing their grad program. They were getting ready to finish. This was their last class to do this internship thing, and practicum at least. And so I said, now what can I talk to him about? I couldn't think of anything. And during the time, I know that my mother was in the hospital, and she was dying. Perfectly put it, she had a heart condition and she wasn't going to get any better, and we knew that. And as I began to talk to him, I fell apart. I didn't realize how much that I was carrying, how much I was trying to balance, because I was working. I had work, I had church, I had my family, I had all of that, and school along with that. I went to school full time in a graduate program, and I worked full time. And so trying to balance that, I was at my edge with things. And so I fell apart because I knew that I was struggling. I was really struggling. Um, my mother made me promise I would not quit the program. So quitting was not an issue. But as I went through that program, I got to kind of evaluate myself, and I needed some good evaluation. Um, After I finished, I went to work for community mental health. They wanted to know if I wanted to do school counseling because that was my lifestyle of work. I did school counseling. I did school, working with the children. So they thought I would take that track, but I wanted to do mental health because I wanted to know what went wrong. what's happening with the children, what's happening with the family. How do they end up where they are?
Yes.
And surprising to the group, I did my internship at Macomb County Jail
Wow.
as a mental health tech. And my teacher, instructor, he thought I was completely out of my mind. He said, why don't you do the school track? It'll be easier for you. And I said, but what do I do with the children when they have to go home to that home that they're going to?
Yes.
I need to know more.
Yes.
So that's why I did my internship. And I found out where the parents were. Many of them were in jail. I met some of them in jail.
Wow.
As I went into counseling, I met many of the staff people who I worked with for years to be in mental health, receiving services that they were experiencing, and I began to think, how could we really have helped those children? They don't have any help because many of the staff was experiencing a lot of things that the children, are experiencing. They've gone through these things in their past. They don't know how to help the children because they don't know how to help themselves. Then the flip side of that, if any of you know anything about the Church of God in Christ, we don't believe in no therapy, no anything. I had to get my pastor to the point of saying, we do get depressed and we do get anxiety, because he would get up there when I first started going in that church and he said, you don't need no psychiatrist. You don't need no Prozac. All you need is Jesus.
My God.
Well,
there
were many people in that same church who were at the clinic. I was sitting there in service one day when this young man walked up and tapped me on my shoulder as the offering line was going by. And he said, hey, can you help me? And I said, excuse me. He said, well, I moved and I haven't been able to get my medicine. I really need my medicine bad. And I said, okay, just write your name down and I'll help you to get that medication. Tomorrow I'll work on it the first thing in the morning. But that was one of those people that was sitting out yelling louder than anybody in church.
Wow.
Yeah, you don't need no mental health professional. All you need is Jesus. We need more than Jesus, even in the church setting. I've worked in that position where I did the intake process where the church people, and I'm not putting down the church people, but people would sneak, and it wasn't just them, they would sneak their relatives in. They wanted them to have a Christian counselor so that they were assured that nothing would get out about them being there. And I'm talking about well-known people and everything. And so we went through this process. But those early childhood experiences are things that we don't pay any attention to.
Yes.
This is not something when when the young lady talked about the things that she went through, surely a lot of those things went through her mind when shocks, trauma went through her mind when she was growing up. For a child to be injured in a car accident and to that magnitude, there's trauma. The simplest little things, and most people are not aware of. Trauma exists and it's real.
Amen.
And it affects a lot of us and what happens in our lives. And I'll give you just another perfect example of that. My grandson, I have 3 grandsons here, and one of them was bit by a pit bull a few weeks ago. And he was bit pretty bad. We rushed to his mom and I, and we took him to the hospital and everything. And it was, that dog bit into him so bad until it pulled flesh out of him. And they had to put the flesh back and stitch him up. And when he brought him home, his 2 brothers were just standing there at the door. Those kids was traumatized.
Yes.
They were traumatized. And so I said to his mother, I said, okay, this is where I have to take off the mother's hat, grandma hat, and I have to put the therapist hat on, the therapist piece. And she said, what do you mean? I said, I'll have to do trauma debriefing with them.
Wow.
And so I had to do trauma debriefing with my grandchildren. Whereas most people don't have that option.
Right.
When things happen, things are swept under the rug or people just don't know. And everything's not swept under the rug. There are things that people just don't know.
Right.
Because even with saying to her, I'll have to do a trauma debriefing with them, she didn't understand what I was talking about. But at that time, a person is able to express their feelings, their thought, how did I feel during that time, what was going on in my body. And to hear that child say, my body it feels like it's just quivering all on the inside. He was traumatized.
Yes.
And so things like that, and not just with the dog bite, but the molestation that takes
Mm.
place among children, the
Yes.
inappropriate touching that's done among, with children and among children. And
Yeah.
they're afraid to say something because many times the perpetrators will word themselves in a way that they make the children feel like it was their fault because
Yeah.
you gave me permission.
Manipulation.
And when they say, well, you gave me permission to do it, you might want to think, well, what does she mean when she say that? Well, the worst thing I think parents can do is not talking to children in appropriate language about their body parts.
Okay.
Boys don't have a little wee wee. They have a penis.
Come on.
Girls have a vagina. They
Yes.
don't have no pocketbook. And when you turn around and ask the child, can I touch your vagina? And she say, well, it's not going to hurt. I'm not. And she say yes and realize what you're doing.
Right.
And you turn around and the child say to you, well, you're not supposed to do that. Well, you told me. I asked you, but that's my pocketbook.
Wow. Come
And
on.
so simple things as language,
Yeah.
appropriate language, it's just so much to this, Latanya, that children get caught up in.
Yes, ma'am.
Um, and it starts through childhood.
Yes.
Many times the parents have been traumatized, they've been victimized, and they can't help their children because it happened to them.
Wow.
And so, how do you help another person, your children, when it happened to you and you can't tell anybody?
Wow.
And I want to say this one other thing. As a part of my work as a therapist, because after I stopped working, after I finished school, I went back to work because I stopped working to do my internship. And I went back to work for Head Start, and I did it. I was only able to do it for 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because I was so stressed on that job. And I'm not one who let anything or anybody stress me out. I will tell you to keep your problems to yourself. If I can't help you, don't think you're going to dump all of this stuff on me. And
Mm-hmm.
I can help you when you want to tie my hands. Don't tie my hands. Let me help you. And I'm
Right.
more than glad to help you. But when I went back to work, because people knew that I had gone into the mental health field, um, I had my degree in counseling. Everybody wanted to talk.
Wow.
Everybody had something. And even people that you saw and you knew that they were going through something, I could not do it. I went to my director and I turned in my resignation. And she said, well, I know where you're going. She said, you're going back to mental health. And I said, yes, I am. Uh, After I went into mental health first. Let me backtrack a little bit. When I finished at the jail, my internship, I went to work for 3 years in community mental health because they told me that in order to validate my degree, because I had no experience in mental health, they said you need to work 3 years. I worked the 3 years and I went back to Head Start,
Mm.
thinking that I would be able to help the families, but I couldn't help the family for trying to help the staff.
My God.
And so after going through that, I went back to work for mental health. But my worst connect case uh, thing that I had was at one point I worked with children and adults.
Okay.
Now, the program I supervised was called Assertive Community Treatment. It was
Mm-hmm.
an ACT program.
Mm-hmm.
And in that program, it was the worst of the worst when it comes to mentally ill people.
Wow.
Uh, these were people who had been to the state hospital, spent many years there. Some were out because they had been found guilty by reason of insanity.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked in that program. And they also had a children program called Home Base. So I managed both of those programs. And in that program, I met this little girl who was 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And she was coming out of a home. Actually, she was coming out of Vista Maria.
Oh, okay.
She had been there in some other place for a few years. She was 12 years old, and actually she went there, I want to say when she was 8 years old, and she had been there ever since. And when she came out of the house, she's a big girl. She's beautiful, beautiful big girl.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened was, prior to her going there, she had a story behind her.
Wow.
Whereas her brother's friend, best friend, was pimping her to other people.
Jesus.
She thought he was her, boyfriend. You know how little girls get sometimes, they get their
Yes. Yes.
boyfriend and everything. And so he had her come in, and then he started to take her, to sell her off to his friends, have them come to their house, and they instill a fear and you tell anybody, I'm going to kill you. He showed her a gun. But a lot of this did not come out until later.
Wow.
But the thing of it is that her mother couldn't help her. Her mother tried and she tried, and it seemed like no matter what she did, the child was bucking against her and she was bucking against the mother. Um, the grandmother was involved in trying to help, and the grandmother was really helpful. She kept her,
Mm-hmm.
but the child started to disappear and things of that nature. And a
Mm-hmm.
part of her disappearing is that she wouldn't tell anybody where she was going, but in the middle of the night, she would call me.
Mm.
And it was a part of what I did as my job. As if the client called me in the middle of the night, then we went to get them.
My God.
I called a member of my team who went out with, actually, he wasn't on my team anymore, but I know that he was experiencing that area. I said, because here I am going out at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And new people on my team, they don't even know where to begin with this.
Mm.
But what later happened, I did cognitive behavior trauma focus, called trauma focused cognitive behavioral therapy. That's the type of therapy that you do with children when they've been traumatized.
Okay.
And so she was my client to do that type of therapy with her. That was a specialty. And when we got through the whole thing, they had to do a trauma narrative, and they had to write their story, their book, however they did it. There were certain things that we give them to do when they put this book together. And at the end of when they completed their book, then they could share it with anybody that they knew, wanted to, not knew that they knew, but anybody they wanted to. And I thought because maybe she was, close to grandma, that's who she would share it with. But she decided to share the book with her mother. And as she began to read her book, I told her mom, I said, she wants to share her story with you. And when she started to share her story with her mother put her head down. She put her head down. She held her head. She banged the table. And the child looked at her. I looked at her. And she said to her child, that cannot be your story because it's mine.
My God.
She said, it cannot be your story because that is my story.
Jesus.
And these are the type of things that children are going through.
Yes.
These are the kind of things that parents go through, and there is a lot of help that's needed.
Yes.
There is not enough help that's needed.
Wow.
There
Wow.
is been a uprise in everything since COVID, because you put people in the house with people that they don't even want to be in the house with.
Wow.
So now you're stuck with them.
Right.
You used to could get out, but you can't get out now. And so you're stuck with them. So everything is on the rise. Suicide is on the rise. Substance abuse is on the rise, and all of these things. I've retired twice.
Oh,
And I went back to work, and I work as a substance abuse therapist for one of the community mental health agencies. And it's so much needed. I
yeah.
went back because they needed me.
Oh, and thank you for doing that.
I went back because they needed me. We have a lot of young therapists, and they're excellent, but the experience, very little, can do substance abuse and mental health. So I do both substance abuse and mental health.
Wow.
But
And
there's just so much
yeah.
to this. And
yes. What
all
a
we
gift.
can do
Miss
is
Alma,
what we can do. Yes.
you just reminded me too. We had to do ours was Life Story and Adrian. And
Mm-hmm.
my mom and I had that experience as well. Not with her necessarily saying it was her story,
Uh-huh.
but that was when I found out about my biological father.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a trauma that trickled over into life as well, adult life as well.
Yes.
Because,
Mhm.
you know, I always felt like um, there was some um, not she protected me with what was not true. And
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I teach my kids is um, it's always better to be hurt by one truth than to be hurt by two lies. Um,
Wow.
and so
Beautiful.
That is.
the reason why is because I had to go through life already not knowing the truth and then to learn it at a later time and then have to process another 9 months in Adrian because I had to go through the therapy to get through that part that I already knew.
Wow.
And and there's a lot that could have been. I heard your story, and a good therapist could have helped you. Um, a good, I don't know. Can I ask you how old you are?
39.
Okay, a
Yeah.
good therapist could have helped you because by that time, different programs and things like that was put in place to help you. But just prior to your age, there was nothing you could do. They waited. The
Wow.
law waited until you got in trouble before
Jesus.
they would help you.
Yeah. And my mom tried because I went through
Mm-hmm.
spiritual counseling. I went through mental therapy. I was in Kingswood.
Mm-hmm.
But my issues had a lot to do with those things. You know, I
Trauma.
always felt like they're playing my intelligence. They
Mm.
think I'm stupid. They're lying to me. And even in adulthood, I can't stand a liar, a thief, or somebody to play my
Mm-hmm.
intelligence. So
Wow.
you know, it's those things. And as a parent, it's important that we make sure that we keep those lines open with our kids
Oh,
because
yeah.
Yes.
if
Absolutely.
we don't, then those same things will happen. And there's some responsibility on the parent too, you know,
Right.
because if you have a
Mm-hmm.
child that's just angry and they
Yes.
lived a pretty decent life, you have to figure out what's wrong with them.
That's
You know,
true. That's true.
He,
so
But
I
sometimes
Bria
we're.
in here. Can I get Bria in? I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry. I'm sorry, Bridget.
I want hi Bria. Thank you for being so patient. Bria, I only want you to share what you are comfortable with sharing. I believe you lost your dad this year, correct?
yeah, last year.
First of all, condolences on such a significant loss. I want to talk to you about what you heard your mom express earlier. And does any of that coincide with what you've experienced now? Do you have a similar story than your mom?
Um, I don't have a similar story to her. Is this? I don't know. Not really.
Then tell me what your story is in
Um,
your childhood.
Can I say
well,
something, Latoya?
Hmm.
You want to do kids on a different show.
Okay,
Yes. You want to do kids on a different show.
I can accept that.
Okay.
Would you feel more comfortable doing this a different time, Bria?
no, I'm done now. I'm already here.
I'm opening up to what's comfortable for you.
Yes. Yes.
I don't want to make you feel as though you have to share anything or push you or prod you. I have a daughter too. How old are you, Bria?
16.
16. My daughter is 19. And sometimes she does tell me that I can be pushy. So let me
Oh,
apologize. If I oh, tell the truth, Miss Alma, because
mine too.
I want to know so bad so I don't make mistakes. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you over communicate, it can be just as bad as under. So, Bria, I want you to share from your heart what you're comfortable with about your experiences. Only what you're comfortable with.
Um, um, growing up, I had a decent childhood, a very wonderful childhood. I didn't really have a lot of trauma things or anything happen to me, but um, I was I don't know how to put it. Um, Growing up, I grew up without a father, and
Okay.
it kind of like caused me to lose myself at a young age, to where I was like lost and closed off, and
Mm.
I didn't really like right now. As you can see, I'm struggling with trying to express a lot of things because I'm not used to expressing things I keep to myself. I'm normally like not open, so kind of like hard. But
Well, I thank you for this.
growing up without a father was kind of like hard.
Mm-hmm.
But in the midst of it, I always had my mom, and um,
You're doing good. I think you just said a whole lot. You said
um,
a whole lot. I'm sure it's hard not having your dad. Does it make sense to say that your mom did she try to be more available to you because of that? Or how was that dynamic? Did you say you missed him, or did you talk to her about it at all?
no, I didn't really understand it growing up. I always felt like I was always angry. I was always angry at my mom. I didn't really know the backstories to why my dad wasn't around. I always felt like I was being lied to, or
Mm-hmm.
like she was keeping him away from me, which is why I am the way I am now. Is why I'm so always so angry, and even when I try to express how I feel, I always express it the wrong way. I always come off disrespectful. I always come off rude and angry, and I might even come off rude and disrespectful to the wrong people that didn't do nothing to me. But it's not my fault that I don't know how to express how I feel.
That's huge. What you
Yeah,
just said is huge. You just acknowledged I may say things that may be rude to people, but really I'm hurting.
Yeah.
right.
That
And
is
Bria
huge.
Bria just learned the truth behind why her dad was not in her life on her 15th birthday.
Wow.
Dad and I hashed that out because I protected her. Again, a mom trying to protect the child. I will always say your dad is sick. But the truth was he was an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
He had gotten off into drug abuse. And
Mm-hmm.
although I didn't experience the physical abuse from him, he was very, very physically abusive to his other kids' mothers and
Mm-hmm.
even to some of his other kids. So Bria has siblings that she just met over the last 2 years, um, or over the last year rather, since he passed, because we all felt safe to bring our kids into that environment to meet each other. But while he was here, it was always a no. And when I did trust to allow him around in 2009, he destroyed my home and
Mm.
left my kids home alone.
My God.
I lived in Roseville and I was around a lot of Karens. And
Mm.
as a result of that, he was AWOL at the time and I didn't know. I thought he was on a leave of absence from the military.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of that, my kids were um, removed from my home. And I was pregnant with Christian at the time, so I couldn't work. I couldn't do any of the things that I needed to do to get through the parenting program and get them back. And they had to go with my mom. And I'm
Mm.
sorry for tearing up.
It's
It's
okay.
okay.
It's
But
all right. It's okay, Kia.
I
Mhm.
I Brendan walked Bria and Brooklyn across the street. Bria had to be 3 because Brooklyn was 6 months and Brendan had to be 6.
Mm-hmm.
He walked them across the street and asked for help because they were there alone. And when I got back, my neighbor was in my house. My house was destroyed.
Yes.
And I was just like, what is going on? And so the police came out. And as a responsible mother, I let them in.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of them just asking me what was going on, they
Mm-hmm.
looked around and they seen the broken glass and everything that could have been wrong. The plumbing in one of my bathrooms was messed up. So they called Child Protective Services out. And the next thing I knew, car seats was brought in the house and kids were gone. And I was so scared. I didn't call my mother because I knew she would be angry. So I called my sister and she didn't make it out there in time. So they were actually in like foster care for 3 weeks before
Wow.
my mother could even get them.
Mm-hmm.
And I always said, I left those kids at home by themselves. And the reason why is because I knew that Michael was not stable
Mm-hmm.
and I trusted him. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought that he was going to do what was right. And
Mm-hmm.
even through those years after, I still protected him from Bria. You know, I always say he's just sick. You know, he's sick. That's why he can't come around.
Mm-hmm.
But on her 15th birthday, he came out to my house and he was like, "You gonna tell her the truth?" And I said, "Do you really want her to know the truth? Because if I tell her the truth, I'm gonna tell her it all because she's old enough to understand it now."
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we had a big blow up, and that's when she found out that her father was an alcoholic. He was abusive, and she by this point she had started talking to her siblings. So, you know, she started putting all the pieces of the puzzles together. And so
Right.
now, over the last 2 years, she has been combusted with all of this knowledge from 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
She does not know how to express it. She does not know how to release it. And I don't know how to help her with it, you
Mm-hmm.
know, because there's still anger there, even with me concerning him, you know. So when he passed, it was bittersweet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's hard to even say. You know, you don't want to tell the child, you know, I'm relieved in some ways, you know, because now he's not here to hurt himself or others. Because you still have to have the compassion for her, you know. And so now that's my reality to deal with too in
Mm-hmm.
her life. And you know, but we worked through it, and we talked through it. And Bria is pretty spiritual. You know, she prays a lot. She has a heavy anointing. Um, and very keen discernment. So a lot of things she's able to kind of learn just from talking to God. But um, when she found out the truth, she was crushed. You know, it was hurtful, and it was a hurt that I could not help her with. And I just remembered the generational cycles. You know, my dad denied me. Brenda's dad in the beginning denied him. My sister's dad was an alcoholic, and we had to endure it. Bria's dad was an alcoholic, and we had to endure it. You know, and so that was all I could think. And now I just say, well, how do we get past it? How do we get through it? How do we embrace it all together and, you know, and work through it? So,
That's can I answer to that?
Go ahead, Miss Alma.
Uh-huh. I don't know that if your Bria is if your child is receiving therapy.
not right now. She was, but she
Okay.
didn't do well with the therapist that we had.
Okay. Always change them. I mean, every therapist not is not a good therapist.
Yeah.
So don't come out of therapy. Never come out of therapy. But if there is a need to change the therapist, then change the therapist. And keep in mind too, a lot of times when we go into therapy, we think that the therapist is supposed to tell us what to do and solve our problem, but they're not. They're to help you, support you as you make the changes.
Yeah.
And so keeping those things in mind. Um, Even family counseling, would be good for um, you all. So a lot of times insurances won't pay for family counseling, but there's always a private counselor or always a church, mini ministry, not just a because that's my other thing too. I must say, I don't believe in pastoral counseling. Sometimes I think it's so biased at times.
It can
Um,
be right.
and so I think that counselors, when it comes to certain things, need to be professional. And
Amen.
I just don't, it could be so one-sided. But there are good counselors who are, and licensed counselors who are part of a church setting.
Mhm.
So I think to get into family counseling would be a good thing for you, um, to help you through that situation. And when you told her that her dad was sick, you didn't lie to her, because substance abuse is a sickness.
Yes.
It's a sickness. A long time ago, we didn't look at it that way, but it's among the diagnosis in mental health that substance use is a sickness, and it is, really, really on the rise now. So don't think that you lied to her and doing it. And Bria, everything that what I'm hearing for your mom is that she tried to protect you, although she didn't know how, because she really haven't known how to take care of herself. She's
Right.
been through a lot herself, and that's the problem with a lot of adverse childhood uh, events, is that that person has been through trauma themselves, and they really don't know how to do this. So,
Yes.
if you want to blame her for anything, it would be lack of knowledge, because she don't know, and nobody tells you any better.
Absolutely.
Yeah, nobody tells you. People, families, they want to hide that. Everybody wants to look good, and they hide it. Um, I treat my children. My children are adults and grandchildren, but when they come to my house and we have family gatherings, we have an activity. We do goal setting,
Oh,
and
I
so
love
and
I
so they're always telling
love
me, "Mama, take off the therapist hat. We're at home." But when I know that you need help, I'm an open book with it. I can talk about me, and I can help you along the way. So I don't act to them as if my life is perfect or that it has been perfect, but that we can work on these things together. And you and your daughter can work on those things together.
Absolutely. We have a comment, Miss Nicole Holmes. This is one of my sisters. She says, "Thank you for being brave. It takes courage to do so." And she says she's encouraged. So, Bria, you are encouraging other people.
Mm.
I am so grateful to you, Bria, for trusting this platform to share. I'm grateful to all three of you for
Mhm.
trusting this platform. I see a lot of myself in the situation. And I am not gonna lose these eyelashes today. Put them the other day, and
It's okay. You put them on. I heard you say earlier on your post, though. You can take them off. So go on,
these
girl. Go for it.
eyelashes were put on by yours truly, and I'm not
Uh
trying.
huh. So let them go. Just let them
But
go.
see, here's the thing. Here's the thing. When a mother becomes pregnant, there's no guarantee that she's prepared for that. Our
Nobody teaches you.
there's no that you don't a book, you don't get all this knowledge. And although our bodies allow us to give birth, many of us as moms do so in the dark. In the dark. And whatever we were dealing with, Miss Alma, you said something that smacked me in the face and straightened out one of my curls.
Uh
Because
oh.
some, sometimes our mothers have experienced things that they were told to never share.
Yes.
I feel as though, and I'm gonna talk real slow so I don't lose it here. I feel as though as moms, we only allow our children to know the parts of us we want to show.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I wish, Lord knows, I wish I could know more about my mother. I wish I could sit down and say, "Who are you?" Um, because I would probably understand so much more about her. Um, she's a wonderful woman. I love her dearly. She's alive and well. And I don't necessarily blame her for what went wrong. Just knowing is half the battle, y'all. I feel like if you can know a little bit more, you can be empathetic and understanding. I've tried really hard with my daughter to be an open book. I had some similar issues, Kia, with my daughter's father. That was not a, a good situation at all because he did not acknowledge her prior to dying. And we found out about his death on the internet.
Wow.
So, and I struggle. Like, do I tell her? Does she even need to know? Because she don't know him. But yeah, I told her. Because
you should have.
if she was wondering, would she ever meet him? Unfortunately, with him being deceased, I had to tell her because that's not going to happen. You know, I couldn't keep that from her. But I never said anything bad about him in her presence. And because at the end of the day, I chose to lay down with that person. I chose. That was a choice I made. I knew what his past was when I did that. She is my gift. She is my baby girl. And what I have tried to do was just be the best mom. I can't be a mom and a father.
That's
You
right.
will never hear me say Happy Father's Day to myself. I will never say that because I'm her mother. And I want mother anointing. That is my role in her life. I don't try to be mom and dad. I just try to make sure she is so surrounded by role models. She's got a grandfather living and a grandfather who's deceased, and she's got, you know, a godfather, well, two godfathers now. So I've just tried to make sure there were people in place. She's got a wonderful auntie who I see is in the comments. I wanted to make sure that there were people in place surrounding her to form a solid, consistent, and stable village.
Yeah.
That's what I can do as a mother. I did not raise her perfectly because I'm not a perfect person.
Yeah.
But I'm extremely open about my mistakes. I have a lot of open dialogue, like yourself, Kia and Bria. I love how you two share. Because if you don't have those bonding moments through sharing, then she's gonna tell somebody else what's wrong and you won't even know.
Right.
So when I was growing up and it was like kids should only be seen and not heard, well, you're missing a lot of good information by not listening to your kids.
Yeah.
And their behavior is indicative of their pain a lot of times.
Yes.
And even when they're small kids and they're not used to a stable home and you go from house to house and, you know, when you're moving around a lot, and I know mamas have to do what they got to do. This is not a blame game at all. Parents do the best they can with the mindset that they have at the moment. But unfortunately, the reality is the wrong people are given access to our children and things are happening under our nose. That's why I'm here tonight. And I'm sorry for all the technical difficulties. I'm telling you what, everything that could go wrong has gone wrong, but we're still here. And the reason why I'm bringing enlightenment to this is pay attention to who you bring around your kids, even if it's blood, even if it's a church person. You have to be watchful and know who your children are around all the time. Because there's predators and people who take advantage of the easy access to your kids. And they're manipulating your kids and making them not tell. And you're thinking, oh, that's just so-and-so. That's just so-and-so. No, you can't leave no stone unturned.
Yes.
Well as pray when it comes to who your children are around.
Yep.
You want them to be like me at almost 50, dealing with PTSD for childhood stuff that I should have probably had dealt with or my parents dealt with me 40 years ago. But they probably didn't know how. And they probably have their own stories to tell that they may take to the grave. But I'm tired of that. I'm tired of the stigma that comes with confessing.
Yeah.
I'm tired of the religious spirit that says it's only going to take a prayer. And I love Jesus with everything in me. But like you said, Miss Alma, it's a combination of the clinical and the spiritual that's going to keep us free. I'm so tired of us making people feel as though if you're going through trauma, you must have sinned. If you're going through sickness, you must have sinned. Y'all, we got to stop that.
And you and you know, and it happens, and I don't mean to cut you off. It happens, and they still do that. Um, I was asked to do a human trafficking class for the young people at the church, the teenagers, and I said, yes, I will do it. But I want permission slips from all of the children, because we're going to use language, because I'm not going to talk about the pocketbook and the wee and all of that.
Right.
And so I want permission slips from the parents, knowing that we're going to say words. I'm going to use words that they may not teach their children. And the other thing that I said, that if someone reports abuse, I am a mandated reporter by law. I'm not going to tell the pastor. I'm going to report you to Child Protective Services or the police, wherever it needs to go.
Exactly.
Come on.
We'll talk to the pastor about it, but it's not going to stop me from reporting it.
Yep.
Jesus.
And so certain things I don't get to do. So I'm just going to leave that at that. I am open. I live in a real world, and that's what I call it. Tell people all the time that I live in a world. We all live in a real world. Mm-hmm. So accept it as it is.
Right.
But you cannot get help and support for things if you don't talk about it.
Yes.
Who do you tell? And when mothers say, well, I'm both your mama and your daddy, that's the wrong thing you can say. It's because children expect you to be both of that. You can't be two people.
We can't.
You can't be two people. Financially, you can't afford to be two people. And you cannot teach a boy a lot of things that a boy needs to know.
Mm-hmm.
And so, mothers, you cannot do, you're setting yourself up to hurt your children later on, because you cannot be two people.
That's a good point, Miss Alma. Yeah. Very good point. Now, Miss Alma, I have a question for you. In your experience, when parents bring their children to, whether it's therapy or whatever other community resource, because maybe their children are dealing with some anger issues, do you meet with them together, or did you meet with them separately, or how do you suggest that type of counseling takes place?
It's separate. Mm-hmm. The child is a client, and the sessions are separate. If there's something that a parent need to be brought on, it's up to the child to decide if they want their parent to come in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense.
Because children have to feel safe. It's just like, you're an adult. If you were there and you were going through some trauma issues, you wouldn't want your perpetrator in the room with you.
That's very true.
And it's the same thing with children. And you'll find that children will open up and really get to the root of what's going on with them. That's why I was saying with the young lady on the phone tonight with her mom, it's always better when you do sessions, when you do groups, you separate the children from the adults. They have their own group where they can talk about whatever they want to. If they want to cuss in there, they can do that too. We can't go, ooh, you can't say this. We don't use those kind of words, because they might be at that point with their frustration that it comes out. So don't act like it's brand new to you. Let them talk however they want to express themselves.
Right. And they need to have a safe space to do that. And
yes,
I really agree with what you said, because some people struggle with, should my pastor be my counselor? And let me tell you, I have a phenomenal pastor.
So do I. I love him dearly.
He knows his lane. Mm-hmm. As pastors should know, if you are called to preach, teach, and do some counseling in some areas, that's fine. But when it goes deep into childhood trauma and things that require a clinically educated person to help identify the root. I was going to say root.
Mm-hmm,
root
You know, that's what
Um,
our parents called it. They called it the root.
yeah, because I mean, while pastors have their place and while clergy is qualified to handle certain situations, I think we may be doing ourselves a disservice when we stop with them. And
Mm.
have to make sure that your pastor or leader is able to keep everything that is stated confidential. You would think that that would come without saying, but I've heard
Mhm.
of situations where unfortunately information gets exchanged and passed around to other people, and that can destroy a family,
Now,
destroy.
Yeah.
Go
when it came to my pastor, I will say that it was just his teaching that mental health, you just pray for everything.
ahead.
Um, I can't ever believe for a minute that or say that anything was passed around or anything like that. It was just that whole piece of not believing in it,
Hmm.
because that's what they said, as young
Yeah.
women in the church. When you were having problems, your husband beating you half to death, and one of the mothers will look at you and say, "Baby, you just need to pray." Well, what did you do to make him do that to you?
Right.
It was always your fault as to what happened, and that's the way a lot of the older people were about that.
Yeah. Yes,
But
ma'am.
no, my pastor, he's good, but during a long while he thought the way he was taught that um, you, as a saint, you don't get depressed. And sometimes unless people experience something, they don't hold to it anyway. So that was a thing with that. But now, with everything that's been going on with COVID and all these different things, oh yeah, we talk about depression and all of that kind of stuff. And
Clergy
you know,
was never a safe place for me because my
mhm,
parents were pastors. So I always felt like I had to withhold things
Mhm.
about them
mhm,
that I needed to actually work through and say for myself. But because of who they were, I always had to protect them and I had to hold back things
Mhm.
because I never wanted, for one, I never wanted it to get back to them or
mhm,
get passed around or for them to be looked at a certain way in ministry as a result of something that I shared, in a session. So I always had to be very careful with
Mhm.
um, whatever I said to any pastor.
mhm.
So I
And
wasn't
I under yeah,
or anything.
I get that. I get
mhm,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I understand that totally, because even I got a lot of pastors who brought their children in, and
Mm.
who actually had serious mental health issues, and it was because they didn't want anybody to know. They knew that their children needed help, and they brought them in, so they weren't trying to do that themselves. So
Mhm.
I don't know how open, well, yes I do, because I was getting ready to say I don't know how open they were for the congregation or anything, but I know that one of the pastors who brought his child in, he was all over the radio talking about how that this whole mental health thing and how you're supposed to pray, but yet he was bringing his child in for treatment.
Yeah.
And I'm just very open, and I
Mhm.
just think that God gave us all a bit of common sense,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
sometimes we have to use it. Go out there and get help for yourself. You just have to do it. Somewhere I believe that God put people in your lives
Mhm.
to steer you in the right direction. And sometimes, you have people that say, "Girl, you need help. Elma, you need to go see somebody professionally." And
Mhm.
sometimes I think that may be an act of God when people are telling you things like that.
Right.
And
Right.
so, and and I think we miss it because of what we were taught.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's, there's pastoral teaching, not knocking it at all,
Mhm.
but there's also professional counseling. And when
Yeah.
you need professional help, you need to seek a professional in that field.
Right. Right. I
Hmm.
almost feel like Miss Alma, and this may sound really strange, but
Hmm.
I feel like in every ministry, if you recognize or if someone comes to you, because we give our pastors a lot of respect, and sometimes we put them up on pedestals where we feel like they should be able to handle everything. But I would hope that a ministry would have connections What's wrong with a ministry having connections with those, community health organizations, mental health? There should, to me, be some liaisons
Yeah.
within the church. That way there can be some referrals or some suggestions given to the congregants, like, this is an area where I would suggest that you seek help. Here is a pamphlet. Here is a website. Here is an 800 number crisis line. I want to see us, even in the church, say out loud without apology, there's someone else that can help you in this area, and be okay with that.
Yeah.
Well, I will say that in my church, I can remember the times when, I first came there and the pastor was saying he knew that I was a therapist, a counselor. And I can remember him saying, after he made the statement, you don't need no doctor and all that kind of stuff. All you need was Jesus. I would cringe so until he would say, I know missionary Pharaoh don't like it when I say this. And after a while, he stopped saying it. And when there have been issues where mental health was a need, I have gotten a call from the church.
Okay.
We were in church one Sunday night, and one of the members had a complete breakdown.
Wow.
And they didn't quite know what to do with her. And one of the elders, one of the ministers at the church, came and tapped me on the shoulder and said, mom needs some help out here in the vestibule. And there was a client who was there, and we actually had to take her to the hospital.
Wow.
One of the other ladies and I, but we had to agree to her going, because they said, well, call 911 for her. And I said, no, you don't want to call 911 for her, because if the emergency truck come and she say she don't want to go, they won't take her.
Right.
But if we could talk her into going,
okay,
then we can take her and they would receive her. And so I talked to her. She knew me. She knew who I was and what I did. And I talked to her about, just let me help you. We're going to go here. I didn't trick her by saying we're going to go and they're going to check you out and send you home.
Right.
I said to her that I was honest with her. I want to take you to the hospital, and I asked her, are you taking medication, and all of those questions. And, she was open about it. She had medication, but she had ran out. And I said, now let me say this, because she said, because they're going to let me go. They're going to let me go. They're just going to give me my medicine. And I was honest with her and saying, no, they're going to have to get you stable on medication again. So they're going to keep you, they're going to keep you. But once they get you stable on the right medication, they will let you go home. And so things that she was worried about at her home, I asked her permission to call her family and things so that they could get all of these things, settled for her, so that she didn't have to worry about those things.
Right.
And so we did that. We transported her to the hospital, me and another person. And I'll say to any one of you, if you're having a person who's having a crisis like that, don't transport them to the hospital by yourself.
Yes.
Both of you don't get in the front seat of the car. You put the person in the back seat of the car, because sometimes people could be so unstable that they will grab the steering wheel. They'll do anything. But you put one person gets in the back seat by the door on the opposite side, and you sit next to that person. You put them next to them so that you can transport safely. Because when a person is having, a breakdown, they're not aware of what they're doing.
Right.
And so you want to protect them as well from doing something that they may regret later on.
Absolutely. And when you think about it, if we always liken the church to the hospital. So
yes,
hospital, you have specialists. You have
that's what they called it. Used to call it the Saints Hospital.
All right now.
And
even in a hospital, you have different specialties. You have a cardiac unit, you have the oncology unit, you have the pediatric unit. So if we're in a church and someone comes in with a need that is beyond the spiritual at that moment, it would behoove us, I would think, to try and help align them with the resources that they need to be whole. We're talking about wholeness and wellness.
Mm-hmm.
That's more than tithes and offerings and speaking in tongues. We're
Mm-hmm.
talking about the complete wholeness of the holistic we were talking about earlier, the entire person being balanced and well and whole. And unfortunately, when we come into the church sometime, we're only feeding one part of us.
Yes, but I think we're there now.
Okay.
I think
Praise
I
God.
think that we're there now. I
Right.
can't say that we were always there, but I think that
Yeah,
we are there now.
that's a good.
Bria wanted to say something too.
Oh, come on, Bria.
Come on, Bria.
Um, I don't want to be honest, Miss Elma. I
Yes,
don't
ma'am.
like. I don't really feel like I need counseling. I don't feel like. I really don't feel like I need a counselor. Like I just feel like now how I really feel. I feel like I just need my mom and I need my family. I
Mm-hmm.
might not always have my mom. My mom might not always know how to help me. And I might not
Mm-hmm.
always know how to talk to my mom, but that's just how I feel like. I feel like I can't no outsider answer my unanswered questions. Can't no outsider tell me something that needs to be heard from my mom or that needs to be heard from family. That's just me personally. And my unanswered questions can't be answered because my dad is dead. So if you really think about it,
I think that
See
some
that?
some
Can I
some
say? Can I say this, Mom?
mhm.
Okay, the person, your counselor, should not be trying to answer those questions for you.
Right.
Yeah,
That person should be leading you into talking about that and being
yeah,
and talking to your mother about those things, the things that make you angry, the thing, to hear you out on how you're feeling, so
Right.
that she can support you and how you're feeling, because people don't know how to support you if you don't tell them.
Mhm.
yeah,
So the counselor doesn't tell you what to do,
That's good.
but
yeah,
they help you to be able to they support you in a way that you can talk to your mother and you can talk to others and get those feelings out, because so many times we don't want to tell our parents or anyone else something that's going to hurt them,
Right.
but they can encourage you and support you in how to do that, where
Mhm.
you're feeling like you're not hurting your mother or
Right.
hurting other people because you're angry. You're saying that you're angry. There's a reason that you're angry. Talk about it. And that's
Mhm.
the only thing that they would have you to do is talk about that. And
Mhm.
they would assist you in coming up with the solution and handling that anger. They're not going to tell you what to do.
That's
I
good.
tell my clients every day when they come to me for treatment, and the majority of my clients are substance user and they're on probation and they've been ordered by the court. And I
Mhm.
have some of them that come in there and say, I don't have nothing to talk about. I don't have no problem. I just got caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. I was okay. Then you go back and tell your probation officer you don't need therapy.
Mhm.
I can't tell them that. You
Right.
know, you're drinking obsessively, you're out there, you're doing this and you're doing that. And a lot of it's not related to their drinking. It might be a domestic situation. It might be a child protective services thing. So
Mhm.
you go back and tell them that you don't need this. Because if you're looking for me to tell you what to do, I can't tell you what to do. And I
Right.
can't sit here and talk to you during your whole session. So tell me how I can support you.
yeah,
That's
So that's what a therapist will do with you.
yeah.
They will have you tell them how you can support and help you to get the right words and the right things into place.
That's good. And Bria, thank you for expressing that.
Yeah.
I for
mhm,
being honest because I've heard that before, and as a parent, we have to pay attention to how our children are feeling and their perspective. I will say we got about 5 minutes and we got to wrap up. I'm gonna ask the three of you, if you can come back to do part two. But I will say this, Bria, as a person who has experienced counseling because of issues in my life, what the counselor helped me is to come away from this word, why. I was stuck at why. I wanted to know why this happened, why I wasn't protected, why. And I was so bound and because I couldn't figure out why things happened the way that they did. And it took a counselor to say to me, you may never know. And that person probably doesn't know because they have their own pain.
Yeah.
It took a counselor unstuck to focus inward on, okay, it happened. Now, how do we move Latanya Harris Gooden forward? If
Yeah.
she hears, I'm sorry, if she never hears it really happened, if she can never face the person who ain't even alive no more, how does Latanya become unstuck, not as angry, because that anger starts to show up in my marriage, in my other relationships, at my job, wherever I go. The anger starts to attach itself to other people who probably ain't got nothing to do with the reason why you're angry. So
Yeah.
what the counselor helped me to do is to explain to me, you are not going to have the answer to that particular question, but you can empower yourself to move forward and radically just accept the fact that you didn't approve of it, but it happened, and you can still live and have a life full of purpose and joy and peace in spite of that. But I want to tell you, Bria, I'm so thankful to you for what you have shared tonight. I'm thankful to you, Kia, for allowing Bria to come on the show. I'm thankful to you, Miss Alma. I really hope and pray that if you have availability next week, that we can do a part 2, because I had so many technical issues, and I apologize to my panel and my audience for that. But I really want to do another show because I want to go deeper into what trauma is and how we can help to process it. But Miss Alma, are you still doing counseling now? What are you doing now?
I am doing, I am working reduced hours as
Okay.
a substance abuse and mental health
Okay.
therapist. And so I went into retirement and I was back out in 2 months. I couldn't do it. I couldn't sit at home. I listen. I'm a helper,
Mm-hmm.
and I retired first at my assigned time at 60. I wanted to retire,
Mm-hmm.
and I retired. And after some years, I really my goal was to set up a community mental health, not a community mental health, but community service agency. I was going to put that together at my church.
Mm-hmm.
Had all of this planned and everything.
Mm-hmm.
My pastor passed away, and I ended up at another church.
Okay.
And so at the other church is where I found all of the differences.
Mm-hmm.
So I've worked with a bit of community outreach, but not with a lot, not enough to keep me busy. And
Mm-hmm.
when I sit around after going back to work, I worked almost 3 years, and I stopped 2 months ago. I stopped the end of May, and I went back uh, July 8th. I couldn't stay home. Um, I by the time I get through listening to other people's situations and things, I felt like I could go back to work and be paid for that.
Mm-hmm.
I get paid for what I'm doing here.
Mm-hmm.
I get the calls and I get those things. But a part of what I do is owning your own destiny. I do workshops and I do groups and things like that for other people. And
Okay.
it's empowerment. It's an empowerment
Okay.
group, and I do pretty much what the person want me to do.
Okay.
I have not just because it's a ministry to me. I
Mm-hmm.
haven't got enough nerves to charge a fee or anything.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to businesses, I will, but as far as individual groups, I don't. I
Okay.
used to do a 8-week session
Mm-hmm.
every year, the end of the year, going into the new year, getting people prepared for the new year.
Okay.
So I might do that this year. But
Awesome.
I do that. But I have time at hand because, like I said, I do reduced hours and I kind of work around them where I need to.
Awesome. I do want to let people know, for anyone who feels as though they need a resource, if you're in a crisis, whether it's childhood trauma, any type of trauma, there is a crisis line now that's operating in Michigan where we can text the word restore, RESTORE, to 741-741. Again, if you are in a crisis and you need immediate help, there is a crisis line. Text the word restore to 741-741. Outside of Michigan, you can text the word home, HOME, to 741-741. I want to once again thank my guests for their patience, for being here, for walking this out with me for my first show of many. I'm hoping to have them back for a part 2. So much more I didn't get to, but we have another show coming up at 8 o'clock. Kia, really quickly, how do we link up with your businesses?
Styleseat.com /Vonshay, VONSHAY for the beauty services. And then Lachey Emporium LLC is on both Facebook and Instagram for all of your shopping needs, boutique clothing, shoes, all of that good stuff.
Awesome. I want to let everybody know I am on Facebook. Latanya Harris Gooden is my personal page. I do have a page for these discussions called Critical Conversations. Please go and like that page. Also, I have a women's support Facebook group called Shades of Chocolate. If you'd like to join that, that's on Facebook. I have My Forever Love. That's for my married folks. And Metro Detroit Christian Singles for my singles folks. And I want to let you all know I thank you. I couldn't read all the comments, and please forgive me of all the mishaps, but thank you all for watching, for chiming in. This has been an incredible conversation, and I am praying that we can do a part 2 with my guests. I just really appreciate you all. We got to get out of here. Please tag your friends, your family, whoever you think could use this information. We want people to be free. Bria, my dear, I love you so much for doing this. I know you didn't have to do this, girl, but I thank you for your input, and I thank you for just being open. We got to get out of here. I want to say good night. Thank you to Fred and the Trailblazers Radio. Oh, my peeps, for allowing me to do this. Woo!
Thank you for your
In the book.
free. And thank you both for your bravery on tonight.
Thank you, everyone. We gotta go. I want y'all to have a good night and be safe, everyone.
You too.
All righty. Thank you.